Good evening, and welcome to the Tuesday, November 23rd, Davidson County Board of Commissioners. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and on Commissioner McClure to lead us in the invocation and the pledge.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you. We come to you with expectation of the wisdom that you will give each one of the commissioners here as we deal with the business of the county. Lord, we would just ask that you would be with each family that's here, that they would have a good Thanksgiving and they could actually sit and give thanks. There's so many people that's dealing with sickness and illness, and those folks up there in I think Wisconsin, 5 people killed in a parade. Lord, we just ask that you'd be with all of them. It's such a time of the year to have that on your mind, and it's just terrible. We ask you, Lord, that you'd be with. We have a lot of folks that we know or that kin to us that are also dealing with illness, and we say a special prayer for them. And Lord, we ask that you comfort them as only you can, and let them know that you're by their side. Lord, as we continue our business here tonight, we ask that you would be with us, and everything that we say and do would bring honor and glory to your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm always afraid I forget the words.
For recognition tonight, we have a relatively large group of civic students here from Ledford High School joining us, and we appreciate you all coming, and I'd like to mention your names, and if you'd stand when I mention your names, and we appreciate you coming and getting involved in civics and learning more.
Madam Chair, I actually told them if they'd come up, we would take pictures.
Right, and we'll invite you.
And I believe we had another one come
Another one coming?
right at 6 o'clock.
Okay. I'll get him as well. Lonnie Faust, J.C. Terry, Emily Ruiz, Evelyn Ruiz, Casey Norton, I think, and Taylor Macon, and who has joined us?
Yes.
Come on. Can you say your name for us? Caleb. Thank you, Caleb. Come on, y'all, come on up, and we'll take a picture with you. Okay. Y'all want to turn that way?
And who's your old teacher at Ledford? Miss Harris. I can remember that.
Miss Harris? Miss Harris, thank you for coming.
I think that Three. Shift there to this side. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Good.
Future commissioners.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay, so bring it up over and get on.
Also, I'd like to mention that Kelly Hill of the Lexington Area Chamber of Commerce is scheduled to be the Council of Chambers representative tonight. Kelly, are you here with us? Okay. We also, at this time, would like to recognize any veterans that are in the audience to stand. And if you have not received a pin from us, please come up and Commissioner McClure will share a pin with you. Any veterans tonight?
None.
Not tonight, okay.
They all stayed at home.
In this cool weather. If you have not registered for public address, please do so. On the adoption of the agenda, Mr. Manus has...
Madam Chair,
Yep.
I hate to interrupt you. Can you excuse
Yes.
Commissioner Elliott? Thank you.
I need to, I'm forgetting things tonight, I don't know why. I'd like to ask that Commissioner Elliott be excused tonight. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we excuse Commissioner Elliott.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Now, Mr. Manus has a request that the budget amendment number 5 from the budget amendments item be removed from the agenda, and this was on our email. I'm hoping everyone's saw that.
You say B?
No, it's not. It's not actually on here. It's on.
Okay.
It's on what you were sent in an email.
5A on the budget amendment.
On the budget amendments.
I did not have to put it on the agenda.
Right, they marked it out, so I just needed to mention that. Any other changes to the agenda tonight?
Madam Chair, hearing none, I make a motion that we accept the, agenda as it's written.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your vote.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, do we have anyone registered for a public address?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, we have 2 folks registered
Okay,
tonight.
thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to announce before we begin public address that I reviewed our notes on public address this week just to make sure that we were following all the rules. And there is one rule that states to address, when we address and talk about individuals, that we address them in an appropriate manner. So if you have, I'm just saying this, if you have disagreement or dislike something that someone is doing, if you'll just keep the comments down on characterizing the individuals in a negative way. You could still be against what they're doing or what they're saying, but just keep that in mind. First of all, I have David Anabinet. Oh, I'm so glad I can pronounce your name.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is David Anabinet, and I represent Davidson Land Development regarding item 8 on your agenda this evening, approval of development agreement for wastewater treatment allocation. My client began this journey about 2 years ago when they appeared before you on a rezoning application in April of 2020 for the property just outside of the city limits on US 64. At that time, they sought rezoning. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, is that a matter of public address, or is that down here for item under deliberation?
Madam Chair, if I might,
Yes.
I have been talking with Mr. Anabinet about the concerns with regard to this item as recently as today, and it is not on for public hearing today. And so I had suggested to him that there might not be an opportunity to address the board other than at public address, and suggested that he might want to take advantage of the public address and perhaps at the conclusion of his comments might wish to be asked, or might ask to speak at the time when the matter was called around, which I think would be discretionary with the board, but his only guaranteed opportunity to address the board was during public address.
Okay.
Good either way. I just want to make sure we was
Okay.
on the proper.
And
Thank you.
I just wanted to explain why he has elected, I think, to appear at this point.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Bryan. You're right. It does have to do with an item on the agenda for later this evening. That earlier application 2 years ago was turned down due to Highway 64 being considered an industrial corridor, and you all encouraged them to rethink their plans and return with a plan for commercial and industrial use. Some of you, along with planning staff, encouraged them to also address some environmental concerns and questions with environmental wells on the property, and that has all been taken care of. After the required 1 year to wait and reapply, my client did return in April of 2021, and you approved their application for rezoning for heavy industrial. And if memory serves, several of you even recall that earlier unsuccessful application and complimented my clients for revising their plan. Throughout the process, it was represented by officials from both Lexington and Davidson County that an allocation for sewer would be available to serve the property, and my client had even purchased a sewer easement to have direct access to the city's nearby manhole near their property line. We worked collaboratively with Scott Leonard and Mr. Fry to arrive at the development agreement that was signed by my client on November the 9th and delivered to you for your consideration and hopeful approval tonight. Only yesterday, we became aware of a recent concern that due to information obtained by county management, there may be a recommendation tonight to disapprove this development agreement for the needed allocation after over 2 years of work to develop the property in accordance with your own goals and objectives contained in the zoning ordinance and plan of development. That was obviously disappointing and devastating news to my client or anyone who has made good faith investments and taken risks to acquire, rezone, and plan for the creation of revenue and job-producing property in our county. Given the substantial amount of time and investment and good faith efforts to comply with your wishes and to bring needed economic development to our community, we certainly would ask that you consider approval of my client's reasonable and long-promised request now that they have finally arrived at the finish line and are positioned to develop the property. Madam Chairperson, I do have some information, documentation. Would it be appropriate that I leave that with you all for your reference later on when that agenda item comes to your attention?
Yes, sir.
May I approach?
Please.
When will it be coming up?
Here in about 10 minutes.
Oh,
Here.
it's tonight?
Tonight, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, and as Mr. Fry said, if we will be around, my clients are here. If there should be questions or concerns later on that you wish to address to us in the agenda, we welcome that.
Thank you. Okay, next on our list is Dawn. Dawn, say your name again one more time.
H-A-S-H,
Hash, okay,
like hash brown, without the tape.
okay, thank you.
Gentlemen and gentle ladies, I'm here again, and I'm starting to feel like this is my second home. I really get a good reception when I walk into here because there's always a smiling face. But I am here tonight, as I will every night until we free the children. Acts number 18, verse 9 and 10. This is the reason why I'm here. Then spake the Lord to Paul in the night by a vision, and be not afraid, but speak and hold not thy peace. For I am with thee, and no man shall set on thee to hurt thee, for I have much people in this city. 2 Chronicles 7:14 is very important for this nation as well as this community. I am my brother's keeper. I am standing here because I feel like we're at a pivotal moment in this nation as well as this community. I've been here every time asking you to stand for the children. I have not seen you really stand. And I do know that you are kind of hog-tied because you're not allowed to speak. You're not allowed to tell us anything. And, you know, the Lord says in Scripture, come out of her, my people. So I'm standing here, and I'm going to ask you something He put on my heart just to be strong about. If you won't stand for the children publicly because you're being hogtied, will you stand for Jesus Christ publicly for all of us to see who we're voting for and who we're working with? Are you willing to stand? Because God says in His Scripture, if you're ashamed of Him, He'll be ashamed of you. So now's the time for us to see if you'll stand. Will you stand for at least Jesus Christ? Will you stand or will you sit? Because I'm standing. I'm not ashamed of my Lord and Savior, my Redeemer, who bought me by His blood. We will not compromise with evil. We will not compromise with wickedness. We will not compromise with liars, leakers, corruption, or treason against our nation. I'm going to stand. I've asked you to stand, so now we know where you stand at. There's no cowards that enter into heaven. This is your moment for us to see if you'll stand. Come out of her, my people. We have a wicked, demonic system. And the children are looking for you to stand, but you're not. And I see our sheriff's here tonight. I wonder if he'll stand. I wonder if he'll stand. I've been there 3 times. I'm standing for the children. We gotta free the children, because without their freedom, you don't have freedom. I want you to think about that tonight. You refuse to stand for the Lord Jesus Christ, and thank you, because now we know who we're voting for. No compromise here.
Thank you. Okay. For the consent agenda, are there any items to remove for discussion tonight? May I
If
have
there are
a,
no changes, I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
okay, Commissioner McClure
Second.
and Commissioner, Truul, please cast your vote. All right, for items for deliberate, yeah, you're getting ready to tell us. Ready?
Commissioner McClure, can I have your vote, please?
Okay.
Probably ought to look at
Commissioner McClure.
I get to vote twice again.
I know. And Commissioner Truul, could I have your vote?
Oh, I thought I voted too.
There we go, okay. All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you. All right, the first item on deliberation reads appropriate donation to senior services from James Weichel. Mr. Smith?
Madam Chair, you actually just hit the nail on the head. Mr. Weichel, James Weichel, gave us a $250 donation to use in in-home services, in senior services. I think he approached Madam Chair with this, and she would like to acknowledge that for this evening, particularly because it was a donation straight to a program, so.
Thank you.
Could I just say one thing about that?
Yes.
I'm on the, with the COG that I represent Davidson County on, I'm a member of the, Senior Services, Committee, and Mr. Weichel is a member of that committee also. And I see him at least once a month. And Davidson County owes him some gratitude for what he does. He's a loud voice for Davidson County on the Senior Services Committee out of Kernersville. And when he starts talking, I listen because he knows what he's talking about. And I'm just fortunate, I think we're fortunate to have Mr. White. So I just want to say that.
Thank you, Commissioner Truul. I appreciate that. I was going to say, in this Thanksgiving season, I really wanted to recognize Mr. Weichel. Some of you may know him. He's, I was with him on the board of the Life Center at one time, and he serves the Aging Committee as well, and he wanted to make sure that I recognized both the seniors in public service in our county and our state and our elected offices, and he wanted to honor them as well as the commissioners and all elected officials. He wanted me to publicly recognize Tisha, Amanda, Christy, Cameron, Duffy, Ron, Stephanie, and all their staff at Senior Services for what they do. And he's a kind and wonderful man, and I really appreciate, he often writes to me and shares appreciation of people in public service. So I guess I need a motion and a second to accept this donation. Okay, I have a motion and a second, and if you'll please cast your vote.
Who was the second?
I believe
Who made the motion?
Commissioner McClure?
McClure.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Truul. And thank you for allowing that.
Could I have your motion, please, or your vote? Thank you. All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
All right, we're moving on to item number B, the approval of the development agreement for wastewater treatment allocation from Davidson County with Davidson Land Development. Turn it over to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I even address the development agreement before you, I feel like I owe it to most of the members of the board who are not part of the sewer committee to go through, if you'll indulge me just for a few moments, the sewer saga, if you will, of why this agreement's in front of you this evening, why there is going to probably be a recommendation from me to disprove it or not approve, and what the plan is moving forward. As you all, I think, all of you are aware, back last spring, early summer, it came to our knowledge or our attention that we have with the city of Lexington not as much sewer allocation in the wastewater treatment plant as previously known. At that time, conversations began immediately with them and other neighboring jurisdictions to possibly look at how to increase that allocation. We've gotten these ARP funds. They can be available or potentially available for such projects, and so the timing was just right. As the summer moved on, those conversations continued with the city of Lexington and produced not so favorable results in terms of cost. The first offer from them was $29 million for 500,000 gallons. That's about $56 a gallon. And then the second offer came to $23 million for 1 million gallons. That's $23 a gallon. That's still well above the market rate for such processing of quote-unquote sewer treatment. We've continued our conversations with the neighboring jurisdictions, Salisbury and Thomasville, looking at the potential areas of the county that are, as you want to refer, hot or potential growth areas of the future. And we know where those are and some of the areas that we'd be looking at developing or could be developed in the future but that need sewer. Part of our talks with the city revolved around what we could do to reconcile our existing wastewater treatment agreement with them. And what that basically means is take the bills from Davidson Water and take the customers, as I refer to them, our existing customers, and reconcile what they got permitted for sewer versus reality, what they really pay on their bill. And that difference, because the permit number always being higher, can come back to our end of the allocation, if that makes sense. And so we increased our allocation to a new number, nowhere near what we need to continue to sustain growth in the county in terms of business development or commercial development, but yet enough to continue our process, as everybody knows on this board and hopefully in the community, developing our own corporate center, our I-85 Business Park. We still have lots available out there currently, and are working through an agreement with an existing customer now. So, and of course, Egger is out there as well. So we increased that allocation and moved forward. In our talks with our existing customers, we kind of had to get our arms around how much are they going to be thinking that they need into the future, because that needs to come off that allocation and ensure you can protect what you already have before you start making commitments to other things. And again, the talks with the cities did not end in a place where it appears that we're going to be able to come to a reasonable deal to work through to get to allocation with them, an increased allocation with them. So by just necessity, continuing the growth in the county is going to require us to seek other partners, other areas to go. And those talks will continue. That ties into this agreement tonight, because with your existing allocation, again, with it being precious, if it's the right word, it's not infinite. It doesn't exist. It doesn't continue on. Once it's gone, it's gone. You still have a business part that you're developing. And I've gotten information even as late as last week, at the end of last week, about that allocation and the need from our existing customers. And so by that virtue alone, I cannot, with a straight face, recommend you all move forward with this development agreement. We've worked through this agreement this summer in the hopes that we probably could squeeze it in, but it's not going to be, it can't come before your own business park. It's not possible. You do have another agreement that you kind of looked into or approved, if you'll remember, back early in the summer, pending down 64. That was before this one. It's also on a line that we built and developed. It's also a different deal. The person wants to build the building and lease, as opposed to not have the buildings there, and somebody buys them, they put a building on it, etc. So it's two different deals. But my point is, those gallons are precious. We do have to continue on as if plan B, C, and D is we don't get any more gallons. And so one of these, hopefully, as we continue to develop our partnerships, we'll increase our allocation to develop that side of the county, I say the western side, possibly being able to look to this side with a new partner, and then that frees up our Lexington allocation, if that makes sense. And so hopefully, long-term, that'll be a much better plan and much better strategy. But that's where I am tonight with this. I can't recommend, the board can certainly do how they want to see fit, but I can't recommend we move forward. There's basically 28 acres right over here. It's called the Davidson Ridge Industrial Site for proposed 3 buildings of about, I think it's 20,000 square foot, almost 50,000 square foot, and 88,000 square foot. $15 million of investment over a 3-year period. Again, that encumbers up those gallons for 3 years. At this point, we still got 2 lots left in the industrial park, or the corporate center. And we do not know what's going to go on those 2 lots. And so with the small amount of allocation we have left, we've got to assume that those 2 lots will take in that entire allocation. But again, we won't know until the type of business that comes across our desk. You know, if it's a heavy water user, it's going to be a challenge. You know, if it's a distribution center or e-commerce, perhaps. We'll just have to see. But my recommendation to the board, Madam Chair, is that we move forward with disapproval of this particular agreement, save our gallons for the 2 lots we have left at the corporate center, and we'll continue these talks as we move forward, because this is the beginnings of our new seeking of partners elsewhere.
Is there any anticipated time frame of working something out with these other?
It's gonna take time. We have already been in what we'll call preliminary conversations to get things like cost, time frames. We got some other logistical challenges. With this ARP money, the federal government have shifted the rules around, if you will. So that's going to have to be worked out, not only just in this jurisdiction, all across this country. So the rules with how you can invest in sewer were not clearly stated in the beginning. We're waiting on those rules now. We're not the only ones waiting, by the way. You know, all across the nation, jurisdictions are wanting to do sewer and wanting the permission to greenlight certain things. So, no, I can't give you a firm estimated time. I can tell you if we ink the deal tomorrow, it's probably going to take every bit of 24 to, 36 months to probably get across the river to Salisbury because of the permitting required, et cetera. We have been talks with them a substantial amount of gallons. But it's a twofold price. It's the line delay to get there, and then the connection into their treatment plant, and there's cost associated with tapping in that. And we have that available and work through that. And again, they want to do a site visit. There's some things that are going to have to continue to bring into the sewer committee. But Commissioner McClure, I can't promise you come January, February, after turn of the year, I'm going to have it ready to roll. No, I'm going as fast as I can because the clock's ticking. Again, this is federal money, and it's not going to last forever. Same thing with Thomasville. I remind, some of the board members, again, I forget, everybody's not on the sewer committee. We've talked about this so in depth at the sewer committee, I forget sometimes. Thomasville's in a different place. The cost to get there is going to be a little bit different because I think probably a slope and trajectory of the line going up to get to it. But they're in a place where they are doing a study to evaluate their capacity, what they have available, and it's basically looking at what do you got available and your needs and growth in your own community. They've got to look at their own city and decide if we've got this much percentage left, how much of it are we going to put on it? Because no one likes to do rate increases. It's a necessity. It's part of running sewer infrastructure, but nobody likes to do it. And you stagger that and time that out. And so the question for them will be is how much of what the county is requesting is going to add to that burden. And so we'll get in those conversations with them in the spring, I anticipate, and be back to this board soon with some more plans.
And council's kind of committed to Trinity also with the...
They do have a commitment that's long-standing with them. As I understand it, Trinity's seeking another partner as well and maybe wanting to get out of that arrangement sometime soon. That could benefit these conversations as we continue to talk.
But I think Rowan's first. We've got to move toward Rowan first. And that frees up our allocation from the city election.
So essentially the whole business part will be serviced by the Salisbury allocation, which frees up that allocation off your side of the Lexington treatment plant. So we'd be back to a place where we at least have some allocation, because right now, again, it's very limited, very limited.
You're right, 'cause we run out, that's it. And we can get to Rowan County for less money than, for way more gallons, so we open way more gallons. So.
Just another question. The allocation that we're working with Salisbury is not just for that park. We will have more than that?
We will have more than that, but remember, it's a geographical thing. You know, we would be using it, we can't just use it, say, on this side of the county. You know, you've got to use it in that area over there. But yes, the business park could be completely serviced off that allocation and have plenty more. There's acreage down there to be developed, because I know what you're asking. It's just some of it's tied up in conservation easements with families. There's forestry deferment program land down there that can come out. And so part of what you're doing is building for the future. You're servicing, again, our business part, our corporate center is our crown jewel. And again, there's 2 lots out there, remember, left to be sold. And so we've got to protect that. We didn't come this far and invest this much money in that to not see it through.
But all total, Mr. Manager, we have 3 current customers. The 2 positions at the business park, and then the other one down on 64. Is that correct?
Right now, we don't have any. I mean, Craig takes suitors, if you will, for those lots, inquiries all the time. We don't have, for those 2 lots at the business park right now, any definitive deals on the table. We've got a deal, let's just call it that, being pending, working through on a separate lot out there. I won't go any more on that one, but that one's been going on for quite some time, working its way through. You have committed to a deal down 64 for someone who's going to put a building there and then lease that building on this side of the road that's on our line. And that deal was already ahead of this one. And so that one's, you know, I'm not going to back out that one now, but this here, before we do the development agreement, and that's how we decide to do these, is do them ad hoc by development agreement. You know, have folks come to the sewer committee, petition their request, bring their deal, basically, because we didn't want to have it all be just about investment. There's a lot of particulars involved. You know, it's not just one criteria we're going to look at. But at this point, with the gallons being so limited, and again, with 2 lots out to sell, every gallon you give to someone else, you don't have it available for your 2 lots at the corporate center. That's the easiest way I can say it.
Casey, I'm not on the sewer committee, so I might be asking you a stupid question, but have we looked at High Point, anything? I mean, you said, have we considered High Point? I know in
passing, I have not talked to them, no. I have not. I think getting to them could be some challenges.
Previously, you had to be in a High Point city limit, if I understand, if I remember right.
Yeah, I have not had formal conversations with them, no.
We're trying to get that into the county, and we're trying to get what we already got.
Yeah, we got north pretty well with Winston-Salem, but we're just restricted by you only got what you got.
Right.
You know, that's all you got, and we're trying to find options where we're going to have more. But right now, it's developing.
Well, the reason I asked that question, I realize that Trent is trying to change around some, and they're using some High Points, or they're talking.
It's my understanding they want to seek a relationship permanently with High Point.
And High Point and Davidson County is that close together.
Right.
So that's what I want.
But it's part of, and I'd have to have, that's where I need Ben Palmer's help in terms of how do you get there. There's always, you know, Mr. Yates knows this probably as well as anybody on the board. You know, it's not just looking at a map and saying running the line. You know, there's topography and everything else. If you got a lot of hilly topography, it costs you a lot of money to get to it. So that's one of the reasons why it's not as simple as distance-wise. It may be on a map. Well, it's not. It's shorter to go across the river. But the Thomasville place to look at to tap in doesn't look long, but the topography is probably an issue. So when you see cost on those types of things, you got to factor that in. But this talking with Thomasville eventually could free up in this area, and Scott Leonard, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm doing round numbers here, I'm doing all this from memory. You know, we're looking at somewhere 2,000-ish plus 2,300 acres potentially that could be developed. When I take my hand, I mean in this 64 area over here. Going toward, you know, and maybe another 1,000-ish over there in the western side, toward the corporate center, right around Bill's truck stop. There's some forestry deferment property there. There's some old farmland north of the corporate center. Part of it is in conservation easement, part of it's not. So there's some area there that people soon, and I don't know when, someday they'll come petitioning, wanting to buy and potentially develop. So the Salisbury deal offers you the opportunity to be in that game when that comes.
I agree with Todd. You know, that side is what we need to look at right now with our park down there, and that's where our need is the greatest right this minute. So although we're working on this end, we need to concentrate a lot on Rowan County.
Well, and I don't want to set the illusion that, you know, our problem's solved, we go there. It's going to be an arduous process, long, expensive, worth it though for the entire community for the future.
This is definitely a 50-year project.
But if something happens,
50 years into the future, probably 40.
If something happens, we always have to plan for in our minds the what if these gallons we have today would end up being all we have. You always got to look at a plan and go, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen on paper?
Well, right now, today, it is all we have.
Yep, right, and that's it.
And if you approve this, you pretty much would have to disapprove anybody want to be in the park.
No, you're just subtracting the gallons that they're requesting, which is just under 25,000. You just subtracted that from what you got left. And yes, if someone come tomorrow wanting to buy the 2 lots in the park and it just happened to be 25 more than you just gave away, you could be looking at a deal where that could be, you know, that's your park. You developed it with money, you know, that you time, blood, sweat, and tears put into it. There's nothing, so as I spoke to Mr. Reed and Mr. Hedrick, there's nothing their petition did wrong. There's nothing they could have changed. It's not their issue. It's not their you know, it's an issue or a place we're in today that, yes, we're going to have to solve, and we're going to solve it. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of effort. And you don't want to set the stage for letting anyone think it's going to magically be fixed next week.
I'll ask this question. It may be out of line to ask it, but is there any way we could compensate these folks for some of the effort and some of the time that they put in developing their package?
That one I would need Chuck's help on. I'm not about appropriating money for those kinds of things.
I think it would set a difficult precedent. I also think that they're going to have a difficult time, and I know my learned friend here will disagree with me, but I think they're going to have some challenge in establishing how expenses that they've incurred to date were sewer related. And that's one of the issues that speaks to vested right. If we have to consider this argument that they have some claim of vested right to this sewer capacity, that would be one of the legs which I think is going to be quick to pull out. And the other piece here is they have alternatives. They have the alternative. They are adjacent to the city. They certainly can seek, if they are needing this capacity immediately, they can go to the city. If they don't need it immediately, the manager has spoken how the process will be working forward, and we're going to address this, but the time frame is difficult to establish.
Well, that's comforting to know that they do have alternatives.
I'd like to say something. This is something that I think we all have spent, especially on the sewer committee, a lot of time and energy in meetings and trying to be cooperative and yet stand our ground on what we needed, and then to find out we didn't have the amount that that we would like to be secure in. So it's been hard for me, because, these are folks that are our neighbors, and we had hoped that something would be able to work out for us to provide this amount.
It's our custom to, when we've got a committee that's working on it, to seek their, opinion or wisdom on this particular issue. What does the sewer committee think?
What do they think?
What are you gonna do?
Well, I tell you, this is tough.
It is.
It's tough to take it away from a private sector and invest in our industrial park, but I just want the guys out here that we worked pretty hard through the sewer committee on this agreement, development agreement for the sewer. At the time we done this, we done it in good faith,
We did.
thinking we had the capacity to do it. Or at least not much capacity, but at least we thought we had maybe enough to skim it by for a while till we worked it out with the city of Lexington to get more capacity. And it looks like we've hit a dead-end road with the city of Lexington for capacity, for any kind of budget that we can afford to pay for the taxpayers. Like I say, we can get way more capacity. It's going to take us longer. It's going to take us a couple of years to get there, but when we do, we'll have a lot of capacity. So, as bad as I hate to say this, I can't give these folks the allowance that I rightly think they deserve. But it's just a tough decision. And I know this gentleman here, and I know he's trying to do good and develop, and I know what he's trying to do. And we just got ourselves in a tough spot here that we didn't see coming. So, other than that, I hope we can get the board's approval somewhat to move full steam ahead to Rowan County.
Yeah, we've already
And,
decided that.
well, I mean, we just hadn't had anything verbally. I mean, it's all pretty much been the sewer committee that's been discussing, but,
Yeah.
I mean, the last try with the city is just, that's all we can do. We had a dead-end road, so, you know, as bad as I hate to say it, my recommendation would be to deny. And, maybe something will change. I don't know what, unless somebody buys the lots at the at the I-85 Business Park and tells us they don't need, but.
Right, it could turn out that way.
Could turn out, and as far as I'm concerned, y'all first in line for that allocation would be, my recommendation, but.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we do not approve the previous allocation. And saying that, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth to promise somebody something and have them put in the time and effort that they put in, and then come back and deny it. But I will make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Madam Chairman, I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second from Mr. McClure and Mr. Truill. All right, let's talk about, you said to deny.
To deny.
To deny, okay.
So again, we're voting yes to vote no.
Right.
Say it again.
We're voting yes to vote no.
We're again voting yes to vote no.
Confuse it when you say it like that.
I know.
You're just voting on the motion.
Right.
I got a simple mind for it.
Commissioner Truill, can I get your vote, please?
No,
Yes, please.
Commissioner Truill.
I'm not pushing hard enough, I guess.
And the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
I'm I'm like Todd on this. I think we need to move as fast as we can so we've got what we need to handle this type of situation.
Madam Chair, do we need a motion for us to move forward towards Salisbury, or
No, we got
is that consensus?
We'll work through an agreement with
We'll
them
work on
soon. We still got some things to iron out here. The cost isn't completely narrowed down. There's a site visit they wanna do to the corporate center. And again, we still got the issue with the federal government not making the rules exactly clear, and that's bothering me because that's messing with our time.
But here's another thing, even if the federal government if we can't go that route, we gotta have a serious discussion about
Yep.
spending the money to get
And
to
we
it
got,
anyhow.
you know, we got
because
two big
this
other
is-
projects in front. These priorities may have to move around. So the future's still got some murkiness to it, the short-term future, in other words. But it'll come back before this board.
And as far as I'm concerned, this is the future of our grandchildren right here, so it's gotta happen one way or the other. So, whether we pay for it with federal funds or if we have to find funds to pay
Now,
for it ourselves.
excuse me. How close is, Lexington to having to expand that facility?
They're probably some years out to be asking for a permit to increase. They wanna go another 2 million gallons at some point in time, from 6.5 to, I guess, 8.5 million. They're some years out. The same issue. I mean, they've got some infrastructure challenges they gotta deal with, and part of it is, again, you pay for sewer through the rates. And so, it's no different than, setting a tax rate, so they've got some challenges there too. But I don't anticipate any time next few years, no.
Any further questions? All right, we'll move on to item number C, the approval of the National Opioid Settlement Participation and Proceeds. I'll call on Mr. Smith.
Madam Chair, I'm actually gonna turn this one over, to Chuck.
Okay.
He saw this all the way through to the end, so.
And it's been a long ride. It was 3 years ago this month that the board decided to retain counsel and to proceed with litigation as one of over 3,000 counties and municipalities that pursued litigation in the national opioid litigation. There has been a long period of negotiation. You probably have kept up with the different trials that have been taking place around the country. As recently as this evening, there was a jury verdict in a case which involved some of the pharmacies that were found to be responsible for contributing to the opioid epidemic. That will ultimately play down to us. But you may recall several months ago, we came before the board with the memorandum of agreement that provided with how monies that were coming to the state would be distributed. The manager and the chair and I went down to Raleigh several years ago at an initial meeting to discuss that. And at that time, it was established or was suggested by the Department of Justice that the state would receive the lion's share of those monies and the counties would receive a small fraction. Well, what has turned out to be the case several years later is that that was reversed. And North Carolina has really done something that is unique in the country, and that is that the counties are receiving the lion's share of the proceeds. And you'll recall this from our discussion of the memorandum of agreement, which the board has already approved. In North Carolina, 15% of the approximately $850 million which will be coming to the state, 15% is going to the state, and there's the potential for 85% being distributed among the counties. You'll remember at the time that we signed and approved the memorandum of agreement that there was a formula by which each of the counties was apportioned a share of that 85%. It was based upon a number of criteria. Davidson County receives just under 2% of that county share, and that was based upon population. There were 5 different factors: population and the effect of the opioid epidemic in our county were reflected with that. Today, we're kind of moving back to the initial question, and that is, do we agree to participate in the national agreement. We've already decided that when those monies come in, how they'll be distributed. Now the question is, are we going to participate in the national agreement? And that's the question that's before you tonight. There are actually two separate agreements. One is with the 5 distributors that are named in our litigation, and the second agreement is with one of the manufacturers, Janssen, more commonly known as Johnson & Johnson. The proposed settlements on a national level require that the distributors in J&J pay $26 billion over 18 years, with approximately $22.7 billion available to the states and to the counties and local governments. The state of North Carolina has already signed the national agreement. Now, across the state, it comes to counties and municipalities that are participating in the litigation to have the discussion that you're having tonight to determine if we should sign off on that agreement. There is a time frame on this. The national agreement requires, the Judge Polster out of Ohio requires that we determine by January 2nd of 2022 as to whether we buy into this agreement. If we don't, things happen very quickly. Basically, we're on a litigation fast track, and we would be pursuing our independent lawsuit against these parties. I'll refer to them as the settling defendants. It is the recommendation of the Association of County Commissioners that the counties jointly agree to this. And it's very simple, because the more counties that agree to the common fund, the more that will be paid into the state. If counties say they want to go their own way with this, then monies will be withheld by the defendants to proceed with the defense of that separate litigation and potential judgments that occur against them. There are restrictions that we've already agreed to on how the proceeds can be spent. They're going to be spent for remediation and treatment of the opioid epidemic. Having said that, there is a lot of freedom within that general category as to how the county can determine those funds are spent. This is not going to be dictated by the state. This is going to be something that's going to require a lot of work on a county level to determine the best way to spend those monies. I suspect the board is going to be intimately involved with that. I suspect you're going to be talking with the health director, with the social services director, with the sheriff, to get their recommendations on how, when these monies come in over the next 18 years, they should be spent.
When you say treatment, are you strictly talking about addiction problems or the related mental illness problems? Are the monies going to be available to address that end of it as well?
This really goes back to the memorandum of agreement, which the board has already approved, and it set out two basically different, or not different, but two analogous models by which you can go forward. And in the first piece, it says that there are options for which you can spend the money, which you can automatically use. The second piece tries to encourage the counties to be creative. And if you have suggestions as to how you want to spend those monies, which may not be in the automatic section, you can then go to a board which is established with members of the counties and of the state and seek approval on that. And the reason why they did it that way was to encourage county answers to county issues, but also to make sure the counties didn't take monies that were received for remediation and treatment of opioid issues and use them for something else.
When you say we're looking at 2%?
Just under. It's 1.9, and it's carried out multiple.
Have you seen any data related to, on the high end, what a county that would be receiving, what percentage they would be receiving on the high end?
I can tell you where it's located. Appendix G to the memorandum of agreement that we signed on to several months ago has every county listed there. The email that I forwarded to the board on Monday.
With the map?
Yes, sir. Actually, I think it was the one before that had that appendix attached to it, so you could see where we fall out on that. I suspect you're going to see some of the big counties with a higher percentage simply because of the population and the prevalence of the problem there. But I'm sorry, I can't tell you off the top of my head what it looks like. There were some of our neighboring counties that I did look at just because I was curious as to how we compared to our neighbors.
Yeah.
I thought that, there was some provision for, Mecklenburg and Wake, to deal with that alone.
I'm sorry, sir, I do not know about that.
Okay. The other question is, if we decide to go, separate, do you anticipate we'll get more than the 2% or less than the 2%?
No, I do not. I think that this is the best opportunity for the county to maximize our return in this litigation.
I believe that as well.
That sounds like the only way to go then.
It's the only way. We talked about attorney's fees.
Yes.
Have we decided, I mean, how's that gonna work, you know?
And I'm glad you came to that, because under the national settlement model, there's a total of approximately $27 billion. From that, there has been a carve-out for attorney's fees. Attorneys who participated in the national litigation have to make a hard choice. They can either submit a fee application to the federal judge and request that they receive some part of that pot that's been created, the national fee pot, or they can pursue their contingent fee against their client. Now, we have a contract with our attorney. It's a contingent fee contract, and we agreed to pay 25% of the proceeds that we receive from this. Our national counsel has elected to go instead to the national fee fund and to receive their fee from that. That will turn out to be about 4.81% of what they have recovered from us. It's a much lower fee. But it's monies that they've elected to go to the National Fee Fund, I suspect in large part because of the speed with which they can get that and the push from the judge to do that. They have, however, as I suggested to you earlier this week, they have asked if the board would consider supplementing that 4.81% up to 15%. There is no legal obligation to do that. I have stated plainly to our counsel that it is very difficult to advocate for that when there is no legal obligation to pay that additional fund.
We're talking about a huge amount of money, too.
It would be about $1.25 million.
To raise it to 15%?
Yes, sir.
But although there's no legal, we did promise that.
That's correct. Now, the resolution which is in front of you tonight does not speak to what is called a backstop fee fund. It doesn't talk about us setting up a separate fee fund. It is my recommendation tonight that we go ahead and approve the national settlement, that we don't talk about a backstop fee fund, and that down the road, if it turns out, it'll give us an opportunity also to see how much our council get from the national fund. We can bring that back to the board and consider that as to whether that's something that you think from an equitable standpoint we need to do. The time is of the essence. We have another 6 weeks, I guess, approximately, before January 2nd, something less than that. But it's the recommendation tonight that we go ahead and authorize the county manager to sign those 2 national settlements so that we can participate in that. And Commissioner Truill, I understand the concern that you voiced there. I think that is an issue that we may have to revisit.
And I agree with what you're saying, that will be an issue between now and 6 weeks later or so.
Yes.
I agree.
Chair, I make a motion that we authorize the county manager to sign the agreement.
Second. For the national agreement.
I have a motion from Mr. McClure and a second from Mr. Shores. Please cast your vote.
Chuck, what's the, we mentioned, what, 3 pharmaceutical companies involved in that?
The litigation that we're currently involved with, there are 5 distributors and there's 1 manufacturer.
And how many agreed on that settlement? All 5?
Yes, but there are 2 separate settlement agreements. One is with the distributors and one is with the manufacturer.
And so that closes the matter. We're not involved in any other litigation against any other suppliers?
No, sir. At this point, it closes the litigation with these defendants. I suspect at some time in the near future, I'm going to be back before the board seeking your direction with regard to other manufacturers, potentially with the pharmacies, which were found today to be responsible for contributing to the opioid epidemic in the jury verdict that came back. This first pot of money may be the largest part, but there'll be hopefully additions to that. For one example, Purdue Pharma is one of the principal parties responsible for the problem in this country with opioids. They sought bankruptcy protection. Ultimately, they are going to have to be paying some monies from that bankruptcy court, and hopefully I anticipate we'll receive some additional monies from that.
Just a curiosity question.
Yes, sir.
Our attorneys, how much input did they have in getting the national settlement?
There were really 2 principal groups of attorneys that were involved in the litigation. Our group, and this litigation was so big, so what you really saw were consortiums of different law firms that came together. So our consortium was one of the 2. We had local counsel who represented us in filing our lawsuit here in federal court. And she was extremely helpful to us in keeping us posted with the status of the national litigation. Whenever I needed anything, I could go to her, and she was prompt in responding. That wasn't the experience of all the counties around the state. I think we were fortunate to be represented by the folks that we were. To answer your question directly, there are several cases which have been tried already this year. Probably the case out of West Virginia has drawn the most attention. They were very responsible in that. They had over 30,000 hours as of last week of time and preparation in this.
For our benefit?
No, and that's it. We are a piece of that. They represent multiple plaintiffs across North Carolina and across the country. And so we are a piece of that.
I understand, and I get back to what you said, there's no legal requirement for us to do anything. Suppose we decide to do something and none of the other counties do. That don't make good sense.
Well, it also puts us in the position of a concern that you raised 3 years ago. And that was, if we start paying into this backstop, then we're not getting the same amount as other counties.
That's right.
And I heard your concern then. I remembered that concern. It was a very valid concern then as it is today. And we wanted to make sure when we got involved in litigation that we didn't incur expense that a freeloading county, for lack of a better term, a county that never had to go through the trouble of getting involved in the litigation, did not have. And when I talked with our attorneys last week, I said, that's going to be a tough question from our board, and they acknowledged that there really wasn't a way to respond to that.
Thank you. A motion and a second.
I need a motion and a second.
I already have it, don't you?
I think we do.
We've already voted.
Okay. Have we already voted?
Yes, ma'am. And that motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
We didn't get the report yet, right?
That's it. Where was I? Okay. We'll move on to, a resolution from Commissioner Shores.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is something that's, very important to me. A friend of mine, fellow commissioner from, McDowell County, called me as soon as they voted on this and sent it to me and asked me, if I would bring it before this board, and, I immediately told him that I would. And if I may go ahead and read that, Madam Chair. It's in reference to the heartbeat bill, which is House Bill 31 right now, that is up or hopefully will be up for a vote, and that's what this would be. This resolution would be supporting that. Resolution supporting passage of North Carolina heartbeat bill, whereas 14 state legislatures have passed heartbeat bill legislation protecting the young members of the human family whose heartbeats can be detected, and whereas these legislative bills disallow the use of abortion procedures after an unborn child's heartbeat is detected, usually no later than 6 weeks following conception, and whereas the presence of a heartbeat is a universal and scientific accepted indicator that life does exist, and whereas the United States Supreme Court case of Gonzalez v. Carhart ruled as a finding of fact that a living person is legally recognized as existing from the time a heartbeat is detected, even if the person is unborn. And whereas the existence of a heartbeat is a specific and scientific determination that is defendable and is not based on the changing and ambiguous concept of fetal viability. And whereas the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees every person life, liberty, and property, as well as equal protection under the law. And whereas it is the position of the Davidson County Board of Commissioners that constitutional protection should be guaranteed to every living person, including the unborn that are unable to express or defend themselves. And whereas the state of North Carolina averages 27,400 abortions each year, many of which occur after the development of a heartbeat. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Davidson County Board of Commissioners endorse the passage of the heartbeat bill legislation in North Carolina, and that this endorsement includes a reporting and verification process consistent with that passed by other states. And be it further resolved that this resolution be sent to all clerks, to the board and county chairs in the other 99 counties, requesting that they adopt a similar resolution. Be it further resolved that this Davidson County resolution be forwarded to all members of the General Assembly, including the Honorable Tim Moore, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Phil Berger, President pro tempore of the Senate, Senator Ralph Hayes, and Representative Dudley Green, and the Council of State, including Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson and Governor Roy Cooper, adopted this day of November 2021. Madam Chair, I also let that be my form of a motion.
Chuck, have you had an opportunity to look at this?
Yes, sir.
The verbiage and everything's fine?
I think the intent of the motion is apparent from the language.
Right.
If I might make one observation, I wonder if the representatives that are identified at the end of that, they are actually from, I think, McDowell County and some other counties that are not located within our jurisdiction. I wonder if that might be more appropriately forwarded to our delegation rather than to those individuals.
That was my suggestion in the email. I'm not sure if those were sponsors or co-sponsors on that, though.
I'm not sure, and that's just a suggestion. I don't.
I'm fine with that.
But it does say that it be forwarded to all members of the General Assembly.
Okay.
That's where we landed on that conversation.
Yep.
So-
And it's calling out the Speaker of the House and the Senate Pro Tem, Phil Berger.
Looks like Potts is a sponsor.
Okay. I
That's what
just
I'm reading here.
realized that it's.
Co-sponsors, it said.
Mm-mm.
I just think out of respect, we need to send it to our representatives.
I
I don't
agree.
like our people not having.
Sponsors are,
I don't know anything about it. I mean, that's just my personal feelings.
sponsors are Kidwell, Hannig, Cleveland County, C. Smith, Clampett, Faircloth, Gillespie, K. Hall, McNeely, McNeil, Miller, Moss, Pless, Potts, Rogers, Strickland, Wheatley, Willis, Winslow, and Yarborough. Those are the co-sponsors, Commissioner.
So you're okay with amending your motion to include our delegation?
I'm fine with that. I thought that would have been in there since it says all members of the General Assembly, but
So,
if the majority of the board wants it to specifically say our delegation, that's
since
fine.
you strike Senator Hyde and Representative Green, since they're from McDowell, possibly?
That's fine.
Okay.
What did you say, Debbie?
She's gonna strike Senator Ralph Hise and Representative Dudley Green.
And insert R3.
Yeah,
That's fine.
if that's your motion, I'll second that amendment. Motion.
He's, Commissioner Shores made the motion and Commissioner Shell second. Please cast your vote.
Good motion.
Mr. Shell, can I have your vote? There we go. I got your motion.
My fingers aren't as fast as you used to.
All of the votes are in,
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate that. Thank you.
and that motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
May I have a motion and a second to go into closed session for matters of attorney-client? Have a motion from Mr. McClure and a second from Mr. Shores. All in favor, but say aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, I think we've got at least one out in the audience that needs to get his form signed, and
With life insurance.
Thank you.
It took me a while for you. I can
I
tell
got the
you.
motion and the second.
I feel good. I get my grandkids shut me up to anything.
Madam Chair, the board considered 4 matters at attorney-client in closed session. Madam Clerk, I will get you the names of the 2 matters that were considered by the board solely for informational purposes. Matter number 3 was the pending litigation entitled Estate of John Mark Hedrick versus Davidson County Sheriff Deputies. The board gave direction to council with regard to further action in that litigation. The 4th matter is the matter involving Michael Langford versus Davidson County. And in that case, the board also gave direction to council with regard to further action in the litigation. Thank you, ma'am. That's all we have.
Motion to
Move
adjourn.
adjourned.
Second.
Motion and second, all in
Part of
favor?
this
Ah.
labor board is, I mean,